making a tier list of every melee weapon in pre-hard mode. I've already done one of these on every boss in the game, so here's a list on pre-hard mode melee weapons. But before we get into it, I have a couple things to say. First, this is my opinion, not what I think other people think, so just take everything you see here as what I like, and comment down below what you think should have been higher or lower on the list. Plus, I'll be announcing the winners of my 500 subscriber special for starting that soon. Anyways, let's get into the video. Starting out in the don't use tier, which means I would not use these weapons in a normal playthrough. And starting out, there are 4 kind of random weapons: the bat, the zombie arm, the breathing reed, and the umbrella. First off is the bat, which is pretty rare, being a 0.4% drop rate from a bat, doesn't do great damage, and has a low attack speed, which makes it pretty useless other than a few niche situations compared to so many other weapons. Next, the zombie arm, which has pretty much all these same problems, and is also a 0.4% drop rate from zombies. It's basically the same as the bat, slow fire rate, low attack speed, low range. It's a true melee broadsword. Next is the breathing reed, which as a weapon is absolutely useless, doing practically no damage. The only good thing about this weapon is you can breathe underwater with it, but it's probably just more of a budget kills potion than practical. It has a 23% spawn rate from ocean chests, so it's also pretty common to get. And now, the final of these 4 weapons is the umbrella, which is the exact same as the first 2. Low attack speed, low damage. The only perk is you can actually use it to save yourself from fall damage and get slow fall. But other than that, as a weapon, it's not that good. To get it, it can be found 10% of the time in basic wood chests on the surface, but it's pretty much as good as a wooden sword for damage. The next few weapons on the don't use tier are NPC drops and things NPC sell. First up is the ruler, which is a basic broadsword that's bought from the Goblin Tinkerer and has a super low range. It's just bad. Plus, you can't even use it like the normal ruler feature to measure blocks, which makes it even worse. Now, the tragic umbrella, which is slightly better than the normal umbrella on damage and bought from the clothier NPC when in a graveyard for 10 gold. 10 gold, and it's just really bad. Then again, that's why it's in the don't use tier. Next weapon isn't absolutely terrible, but it's not great. The combat wrench. It's a boomerang and does okay damage, but it's a 12.5% drop rate from the mechanics. So you have to actually kill the NPC on average about 8 times to get it. And I guess the 12.5% drop rate is a common occurrence, with the next weapon being a 12% drop rate from the die trader. The exotic scimitar, which is a true melee broadsword, and it's pretty bad, being a broadsword that does low damage, and it's just pretty average, just like most craftable ones in the game. Next is the katana, which again is a very basic, true melee broadsword, no special effects, and rarely sold by the traveling merchant for 10 gold. Once again, these are pre-hard mode, so it's really just useless for that much gold. The next few weapons we'll skim over pretty quickly, as they're all just different versions of the wood sword. We'll have the true wood sword later on in the list because I think it's a little bit better. And all these swords aren't quite as easy to get as the normal one because you have to go to different biomes, which makes it a lot less useful since you always spawn in a forest biome. They do different damage, more than normal wood sword, but are more difficult to actually get, so it really just isn't worth it when you could go mining for a gold or platinum broadsword almost as easily. The next 2 weapons, the only reason they're in this don't use tier is actually just because they're better upgrades for it that are easy to get. The second to last item is the mace, which is actually a pretty good weapon for how early on you can get it from gold chests, but the reason it's in don't use here is all you need is 99 torches and you can turn into the flaming mace, which is the mace, but fire. So it's just better. It inflicts enemies with fire, does more damage, so that's really the only reason of mace is on the don't use tier. Otherwise, it's a great weapon for the early game, though you can upgrade it really easily, and the flaming mace will be later on the list. And the final weapon in the don't use tier is the wooden boomerang, which sucks against bosses and most enemies, but you can get this item as soon as you enter the game from wood chests, and it can pretty easily take out enemies like slime, zombies, and demon eyes. The reason it's in don't use tier is because you should never use this, because you can upgrade it to the enchanted boomerang with only 1 star, which you can get your first night and makes it just better. And that makes the wooden boomerang pretty much useless on its own. We'll mention the enchanted boomerang later on in the video. Now moving up to the F tier, the first weapons we have are some swords, broadswords, and short swords made with ores. This part is all my personal preference because first, I like short swords worse than broadswords, which puts the gold and platinum short sword down here on the list, but then I have the rest of the broadswords because really there's no reason to make any broadsword other than gold and platinum, since you can pretty much just skip all of the other ores until you get enough gold and platinum to make a pickaxe, ores, or armor. And if you do decide to make others, you can shimmer them, get bars back, but personally I don't see much reason to actually craft the rest of these swords before you progress on to platinum or gold. The next two are both Christmas items, the fruitcake chakram, which is kind of a weird name, and the candy cane sword. Both of these weapons are dropped by presents during the Christmas event and are about a 0.6% chance in pre-hard mode, and the odds get worse in hard mode. I'll put the exact numbers on screen as they're pretty close to each other. But the point is, for how rare these weapons are, they're pretty bad. Both do mid damage, and the candy cane sword is just another broadsword with a cooler sprite. The fruitcake chakram is just another boomerang with a unique name and a different sprite, not doing anything special for damage. If you get lucky to get one of these right at the beginning of the game, they could be useful, but other than that, they're not great. The next two weapons are both ones that you get from fishing, the swordfish and the purple clubberfish. The swordfish is a spear, and the purple clubberfish is yet another broadsword that has no projectile. Both weapons do mediocre damage and have pretty slow attack speed, plus get very annoying when fishing because you keep fishing them up as they have really high chances when you're actually trying to catch a quest fish or crates. The clubfish has a 10% drop rate when fishing with 100% fishing power, which makes it really annoying because you keep fishing them up. So you'll end up most likely with dozens of these if you fish in the corruption biome often. The final 5 F tier weapons are all different swords and ones that didn't fit into the categories before. The phase blade, trident, mandible blade, bone sword, and chain knife. We'll start out with the phase blade and move down the list. The phase blade is a craftable sword that you can make with whatever gems you want and meteor bars. They all have the same stats no matter the color or gems you use, though these stats aren't great. Overall, like many weapons on this list this low, it's kind of just another broadsword. So they're pretty cool to have, as they're definitely referencing lightsabers from Star Wars, but as an actual weapon, they don't just slice through enemies instantly. Moving on, we have the trident. This is a basic spear that does pretty low damage and can be found in chests in the ocean biome. It has a few special effects when in lava or water, but none of them are very notable or really make it a great weapon. Moving on, the mandible blade is yet another broadsword with a 2% drop from the antlion swarmer and antlion charger, with both spawn in the underground desert biome. I'm really starting to see a pattern with pre-hard mode swords all being a broadsword with no projectile. And with another one, the bone sword. The bone sword is a 0.5% drop rate from the skeleton and spore skeleton enemies, so it's actually pretty rare, but once again, pretty bad for how rare it is. Many of the items this low are okay, it's just by the time you get them, you have much better weapons. And the final weapon of the F tier is the chain knife, which is a flail that does decent damage and is a 0.4% drop rate from cave bats. It has a very low range, which is most of the reason it's this low on the list, a pretty unique attack for a flail, and pretty fast. attack speed. But once again, with how rare it is, you're probably going to have better gear by the time you actually get one of these. And moving up the list to D tier, where the weapons start getting to the point where they're actually pretty decent. We first off have the group of Crimson and Corruption weapons. I'll start out with the Meatball and Ball of Hurt, and are both flails and nearly identical on all of their stats. The two biggest differences, of course, are Crimson and Corruption, in that the Ball of Hurt is actually obtained from Shadow Worms, while the Meatball is crafted from drops from the Brain of Cthulhu. Part of the reason they're so low on the list is I don't really enjoy using flails against bosses, but there are definitely many people who do. The next two are the Rotted Fork and Butcher's Knife. The Butcher's Knife is a basic broadsword, which, unlike the Corruption equivalent, the Light's Bane, has no special projectiles, despite having the same crafting recipe, which makes it very basic and a lot worse than the Light's Bane, which is supposed to be the equivalent. And the Rotted Fork is a basic spear that has a tiny projectile on the end of the spear, but it's so small that it doesn't even make it feel like a non-true melee sword. The next two weapons are both yo-yos, the Rally and the Code 1. Yo-yos are going to be pretty high on this list because personally, yo-yos are one of my favorite subclasses in the game, and I think they're great. The Rally is a 3.9% drop from a few rare underground enemies, including the Crawdad, Giant Shelly, and Salamander. It's a pretty average yo-yo doing decent damage, but it's actually pretty rare despite being almost a 4% drop due to how rare the enemies actually are to farm and find. So it's way too rare to actually be higher in the list. The next one is Code 1, which is sold by the Traveling Merchant after beating Eye of Cthulhu for 5 gold. But for post-Eye, it's not that much better than many other yo-yos in pre-hard mode, so I personally wouldn't recommend it. If you get lucky enough to be able to buy it, it could be worth it. And now some random weapons, including the Ice Boomerang, Bladed Glove, Bloody Machete, Falcon Blade, and Tentacle Spike. Starting out, the Ice Boomerang can be found in Frozen Chests and does decent damage, but if you're looking in Frozen Chests, you'll probably end up finding a Snowball Cannon, which is miles better against bosses and enemies than the Ice Boomerang. Next is the Bladed Glove, which is very similar to the Fetid Bagnats, just in pre-hard mode. Being a low range, high attack speed weapon, that's fine. It's just so many better weapons at the same stage of the game, and it's really weird to get. It's a 0.05% drop rate from any quote-unquote weak enemy during the Halloween event. I'll put a chart on screen with the specifics, but the basics for classic mode are classified as an enemy that drops at least 1 copper, less than 5 silver, has less than 20 defense, and does less than 40 base damage. Kinda specific, but this applies to most Halloween drops, including the next weapon on the list, the Bloody Machete. The machete has the exact same drop requirements as the last weapon, the Bladed Glove, and it's fine. It's definitely not great for bosses, as almost no piercing, but it's a decent boomerang for the stage of the game you get it. And if you're playing during Halloween, it's an okay weapon to pick up. Now for yet another fishing weapon, the Falcon Blade. The Falcon Blade is a 6.08% drop from Iron Crates. It's a little lower in hard mode for Mithril Crates. And it's yet again another broadsword. And it's really just not that unique. They should have made this a short sword or something with a little more special, because it's not worth fishing to try to get this. Unlike the last broadsword in the D tier, the Tentacle Spike, which is, yes, another broadsword, but it's very unique. When attacking enemies, it gives them an effect where some spikes break off of the weapon onto the enemies, dealing constant DPS. You can have up to 5 spikes on one enemy at a time, and they last for 9 seconds. It's not a great weapon, but it's definitely kinda cool, and that's why it made D tier. But it's not as good as the weapons in the next tier, the C tier. Well, I guess that's kind of how a tier list works. For the first category, we have 3 different boomerangs, starting out with the Flamerang, which is an upgrade version of the enchanted boomerang using 10 Hellstone bars. This reason this isn't higher on the list than the enchanted boomerang is because you can't get the flame ring until after you get Hellstone, which means you have to beat either Eater Worlds or Brain. But the enchanted boomerang is useful pre-Eater or Brain. Speaking of the enchanted boomerang, the next weapon on the list is the enchanted boomerang. I mentioned the enchanted boomerang early on the list, and it's great for early game and basic enemies with its ranged abilities for melee class. Other than that, it's just a better wooden boomerang. The final boomerang in C tier is the Shroomerang, which is really good, one of the best ones in pre-hard mode. And it is decently rare though, being a 2.5% drop from spore bats, which are the mushroom bats that spawn in underground mushroom biomes. Next three on the list are some yo-yos. The first one is the Hive 5. The biggest perk about this yo-yo is there's a 33% chance every time it hits an enemy to spawn friendly bees, so it's similar to bee nades, and that makes it pretty good. Other than that, this is pretty much just another yo-yo that doesn't have a great damage output, so I wouldn't recommend it over some of the other ones. The other two yo-yos are the Artery and Malaise, which are Crimson and Corruption yo-yos from Crimtane and Demonite bars. These are very similar stats and are both decent for post-Brain and Eater of Worlds. Other than that, they don't have many special effects like the High 5's bees, but all around for the stage of the game, they're really good yo-yos. The next 5 weapons are some spears and some swords. The Ice Blade, Muramasa, Gladius, Storm Spear, and Spear. First off, the Ice Blade, which has a 15.52% chance to spawn in a frozen chest in the ice biome. It's pretty good at the beginning of the game because it has a projectile and is very similar to the enchanted sword with that projectile. You can also find, as I mentioned earlier, Snowball in frozen chests or even an Extractinator, and both are great items, and the Snowball Cannon is probably better than the Ice Blade for bosses. Next up is the Muramasa, which is yet another basic broadsword with only a slight special attack. And you can get it from dungeon chests at a 14.29% spawn chance in the gold chest, which you have to have a key to unlock. It does decent damage for true melee, but its main use for this is to make the Knight's Edge, which will be at the end of the list towards the top. Next up, we have the Gladius, and for once, we don't have a broadsword with no projectile. We have a short sword. But seriously, this is probably one of the best short swords in vanilla for pure DPS, since there aren't many in hard mode, but it's still a short sword. It has a 5% drop from the hoplite enemy in the marble biome, and it's not too bad. The spawn rate definitely isn't great for the drops, but it's okay. Now for the 2 spears. First, the Storm Spear. The Storm Spear is actually pretty good. It spawns in Sandstorm chests in the underground desert at a 33% spawn rate, and it's great for early game since it actually shoots out a projectile that does 1.5 times the damage that the spear itself does. So this makes it a great weapon for fighting bosses or enemies, as you can get a bit of range out of your melee weapon. And now the Spear, which is just the basic spear, and considering you can get it right at the beginning of the game out of a wood chest on the surface for 10%, you could definitely fight some enemies with it. And this will serve you well until you get a weapon that will be good enough to fight your first boss where you can get some good gear. So it's definitely not awful, it's one of the better weapons for the beginning of the game. And now the final 2 weapons of the C tier are both flails, specifically maces, the Blue Moon and the Flaming Mace. First, the Blue Moon has a 14.29% spawn rate in gold chests in the dungeon. It's a pretty basic flail, but has insane damage, is really good for fighting events and for farming. And finally is the Flaming Mace, which I mentioned at the beginning of the video, as it's just better than the normal mace, since all you need is the original mace and 99 torches to make it, and it does fire damage and just higher base damage. Thanks for watching. I have a new series coming out when I have 500 subscribers that I've been talking about recently, and it's a March Madness style bracket that you, the viewers, can vote in. And the voting has officially ended, with one of them getting 50 votes for the qualifier round. It started out with 32 weapons, and now the true bracket will begin once I hit 500 subscribers. and I'm only about 20 away. So if you subscribe, I may be able to get there soon, and you, the viewers, are the ones who vote, not me. And here are the polls that were the qualifier rounds. It'll be a 16 bracket, and you'll see the official winners in a second. But if you want to see me finish this list, or make a new one for other classes, be sure to subscribe, like, and comment down below. And I'll be sure to finish this list and make a few more, or even go into hard mode weapons. That would also be pretty cool. Here are the winners. I'll announce the actual bracket soon, showing who will be going up against who. And that's it for the list for this video. If you want to see me finish the list in another video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll make sure to do it. But for now, if you want some other videos, I have a tier list of the hardest bosses in Terraria linked on the top left. The bottom right are underrated and overrated Terraria items. The bottom left are maxing things out in Terraria like defense, attack speed, and damage. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe for more.